able to join me on the podcast today. First of all, tell us where you live. Where in the world are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really such an honor to connect with you again, especially since we know each other for so long. But I am now residing in Mallorca in Spain. It's one of the 3 Balearic islands. So there's Ibiza, there's Mallorca, and then there's Menorca. So I'm living on the biggest island of the 3 Balearics. And I have to say it's a very beautiful part of the world to live.
It certainly looks it. When I see your pictures on Instagram, I'm just like, oh my God, that looks stunning. Absolutely stunning. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
gorgeous.
embedded, like some say that there's we're within a vortex, and that the island itself is incredibly healing. It kind of feels, you have that with New Zealand, with the mountain
Mm,
and the oceans. And I think when you're living within the elements, a lot of people, there's a lot of practitioners and healers that they're just drawn, and they're coming from all over the world to be here. And Mallorca's quite quickly becoming like the epicenter of wellness. There's a lot more expansion, yeah, and it's just incredible what's available here. It's just, it's attracting a lot of people who are choosing a lifestyle
mm.
over career, or, excuse me, or they've made their money and then they come here, or they're already working online, but they come here to choose to be in nature, to get out of especially since COVID. So they want to get out of the city grind. And yeah, a lot of people have had a wake up call about what is important to them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's happening all around the world, isn't it? And so
yeah.
tell us more about yourself, Debbie, and who you help, what sort of work you do. You've had you've done a lot over the years, I've seen. It's been so fascinating but inspiring as well to watch you
Oh, thank
carry
you.
on with your evolution. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll just quickly go back to from leaving New Zealand. I ended up living in London, and I don't want to say I got stuck there, but I stayed there for 23 years, and I had an amazing corporate job. And I used to manage and cast all the Lara Crofts from Tomb Raider, the game. So it was in the video side, not the movie.
Mm,
And that was really exciting, and it kind of kept me there. And I met my husband, when actually I thought I was going to come back to New Zealand to live. And when my father was dying, I kind of came back and thought, oh, maybe this is my calling. And I was single. And when I came back to London after I had a month in New Zealand, I met my husband. And then I kind of, everything changed, a bit of
mm,
the sliding doors moment where I
yeah.
could have ended up back there, but I didn't. And then from there I had my children, and I went from having a very big career and traveling around the world. But at that point, what I didn't realize is that my Dharma, and I didn't
Mm,
know what Dharma meant back then, but I
yeah.
felt very, very called to look after my children. And I think this comes from being adopted,
Mm,
and I have understood that I have had a lifetime of abandonment issues from being adopted. And it's really had quite an impact on my life, because I found it hard to receive love.
mm.
And I have found like that I haven't been enough, because of the rejection. And it's just it's been an ongoing journey and a lot of therapy to unravel that. And so when I had my children, I thought this is an opportunity for me to rewrite the story. And I just felt very compelled to be there for them. I felt like everything that I knew and that I'd learned, it was important for me to be that caregiver to them at that point. So I gave up my career,
Mm,
and that was a beautiful thing at the time. But what I didn't realize is how much I identified myself with what I did. So,
yeah.
and whilst it was very healing, and it was right at the time. I then started, without realizing, because I don't want to say that I was unfulfilled, because I wasn't, because I had it all, but I was just used to doing so much. And what I didn't realize at the time, what started happening is I started self-medicating, like through drinking wine, mummy's medicine. And, I'd always, I was in a phase where I actually had been partying a lot of my life. I have this kind of very pitta energy. I've always been someone that,
you do.
wants to get up and go and like
Yeah.
the party. But with kind of that staying at home, I started drinking. And not to say, I don't want to make this like I was an alcoholic, because that's not the story, but I started being a journey of self-medicating. And I started feeling lost, that I didn't really, because once the children started going to nursery and started doing all this stuff, I was like, what about me? And I didn't realize that actually what I should have probably done is gone and got like myself like a part. I should have learned something new at that point, but I didn't, because we don't know when we're stuck in it. Yeah. And so, and at that point also started really pouring all my energy into what my husband was doing. And this is what we tend to do. We start living our partner's dream. And that wasn't necessarily so bad, because he had a very exciting project that came up, and we ended up securing the license with Richard Branson, and we got the contract to put music in space. So my husband had this amazing idea, and we had secured Lady Gaga, and this was a massive project. And so long story short, it took us to LA.
Yeah.
And in that going to LA, I discovered that I was going further and further into being like a corporate wife, but feeling unfulfilled. I was really stressed. I had, because it was a startup business, there was a lot of financial pressure, and the money wasn't flowing. And in that, I got really sick, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And I started by getting a rash on my body, and that rash put me into bed, and I had aches and pains, but I actually couldn't get out of bed for 3 weeks. And a doctor came round, and I don't normally take medication. Have always, since I've had my children, worked with homeopathy and all of that. But a doctor came round and gave me some steroids, gave me a shot of steroids, and it didn't, he gave me some medication, and it didn't feel good, and I took myself off it, and I didn't realize at the time that are meant to wean yourself off steroids. And with that, all my hair fell out. Not all my hair, half of my hair fell out. And then I got an abscess in my tooth, and just everything my body was imploding. I couldn't fight off anything. And I didn't know at this point, I thought I was sick, but I was having a breakdown. Yeah. And I went to an acupuncturist because I was so upset about, more than anything, I was more upset about my hair. And it was just, every time I brushed it, was like just coming out, so much of it. And she said to me, you're having a breakdown, and it's okay, we're gonna help you. But she said, this is what it is. Your body is feeling like it's broken, because you are, and a lot of it's more psychological and so forth. And then kind of at that point, when I had hit the bottom, I started what about me? What am I doing? What is going on? It was that suddenly I need to change. I need to change. And at that point, I had a really good friend, actually still one of my best friends today. She was studying to be a health coach. And this is a little bit later, and I got better and all of that. And we were in the car, we were actually going skiing. And she said to me, because I said, I feel so stuck. And I remember the words like, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
They were the exact words. I feel so stuck. I don't know what to do. I was waiting for this job to come in. It wasn't coming in. And she said to me, she just asked me a question that changed the rest of my life. She said, if you could do one thing for yourself that wasn't involving your children or your husband, but if you were just focusing on something and money wasn't an issue, what's one thing that you would choose for you? And immediately, it was almost like out of thin air, I said,
Yeah.
I would do a yoga teacher training. And she went, what? She said, I've never even heard you talk about yoga.
Yeah.
I just said, I know. I said, but the first time I went to yoga, and this was over 20 years ago now, I said the very first time I went to yoga, I knew in that moment that I needed to be a yoga teacher. And I said, I never have honored it and it was because of my lifestyle. I was partying too much. I had no clarity on, there was a veil there. I couldn't see anything because I wasn't clear. But in that moment, I knew that that's what I needed to do. And she said, okay, well, let's give it a timeline. She said, when do you want to start the teacher training? And I said, well, if this other job doesn't come in, let's give it a month. And at the end of the month, of course, she hadn't even thought about it again. But I rang her and I said, I found a teacher training. The other job hasn't come in and I've booked myself on it. And at that moment, that day, the rest of my life changed.
Wow.
And that was like the journey of coming back to myself.
To
But
yourself.
and it is a classic of hit rock bottom. And
Yeah.
I know rock bottom is so different for so many people, but you can't feel like in that moment you're so broken, like emotionally, that it's hard to even see a way out. And I went to the teacher training, and this was in Los Angeles, and we were living there. And what's, in reflection now, looking back, is my husband said, you went to a teacher training and then you never came back the same person. And that wasn't a good thing for him.
Right, I was about to ask.
He wasn't so enamored with the spiritual yogi side of Debbie. He'd lost his rock and roll, partying wifey that, was always the life and soul. And suddenly I really didn't want to drink, and I didn't want to indulge. And he saw me changing and he wasn't changing. And actually what was really sad is I started hearing kind of, either whether if he was on the phone or I hear it through someone else, but he would talk about yoga and he'd go, oh yeah, Debbie and yoga yawn. All she does is talk about yoga. And he was really quite belittling me. And I do think he wasn't conscious about what was coming out, because he was hurting, because he felt like he was losing me.
Yeah.
So,
How long ago was that, Debbie, when you did your yoga teacher training?
that was 9 years ago.
Okay. And so were you 54 now? 53?
Yeah, 54.
Yeah.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so jump us forward. Did your relationship heal? Did you guys find your way together?
Yeah, we did. I would say, honestly, it took us about 2 years, because I think it was that transition from me being all in, but kind of, my whole tone of voice had changed, everything that I spoke about. What was hilarious is that he thought that he was just like, oh my God, you've got into like saging and crystals. Anyone would think that I was taking heroin and that I was just losing my shit. But it was this, and it was like, looking back, it's funny, but at the time I couldn't see what he was upset about. But then it became normal. Suddenly I've been,
Okay.
we've been in it for a couple of years. I'd softened down on trying
Yes.
every new thing.
Yes.
I think also in the beginning I had a tone of voice where, I was imitating because that's
Which we
what
do,
we're in.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
first we imitate, then
Yeah.
we integrate,
Yeah.
and then we innovate. Then we have our own voice and we bring
Own
in our
version.
own, yeah. And
Mm.
so yeah, it took a couple of years just for everything to settle. And now of course he's always so proud. And actually what was really beautiful was last weekend he did his first psychedelic breath journey with
Hey.
me, because he's always had a lot of resistance
Yeah.
to everything that I do. And it's not, I think in his words, is that he's around it so much that he doesn't need any more of it.
Yeah.
And yet he
Yeah.
goes, and yet I know that I need yoga. I know that I need it. But he just said, it's just all consuming. It's all in our house. You're always working. You're always with clients. I even now bring the psychedelic breath and do them at the house with the sauna and the plunge. He just said, it's everywhere. So, he's still,
Wow. But he had his first experience of it, which
he had
is
it. Yes, he did. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
Well
yeah,
done,
yeah, yeah.
him. So interesting, eh? I mean, I don't, we'll talk about this in a sec, but I don't know about in terms of your own perimenopause, menopause journey, but you were
Mm,
coming into your mid-40s. But it's such reflects so many of us go through that with our partners. And it's
yeah.
almost, I remember one of my supervisors saying to me once, I was so much younger, and she said, look, relationships go through death and rebirth, death and rebirth. That's what happens in marriages and long-term relationships. It's a really
Mm,
normal thing. And I can really hear that arc in your story with your husband is the
yeah.
really the death of the old and then the rebirthing into something new.
Yeah. And I think what I'm witnessing more and more, because obviously I'm attracting a lot more women who are going through their own, struggles, and then looking to change.
Yeah.
And they look at me because I think I represent change in a positive way.
You were coming into your mid 40s. What was, because you sort of had that come to your selfhood earlier on? I'm seeing a lot of
Mhm.
women go through it in their early 50s, late 40s. So tell me then, you'd already had that big shift in your life, which is so pivotal during midlife and menopause for
Mm,
us. What
mm.
was going through menopause like for you?
It's a really good question. It's not at that point. I'm not sure how much was stress and
Mm,
how much was perimenopause, and even now, I'm still like fluctuating between the two, because, and also how much was gut health, because
yeah,
I also am a
yeah,
health coach, and the more research and study I do around gut health, the symptoms are the same. Like, so
yeah,
if your microbiome's out, you're going to have a lot of the same
yeah,
symptoms as if you're perimenopause or menopausal.
yeah.
So, and I have struggled with gut health issues a lot in my life. I had candida in my mid 20s. That was, again, very, very serious. So I've healed from that, but I think there's always that residue there. And I have suffered a lot with hair loss. And,
Mm,
and again, is it stress? Is it perimenopause? Because I realize I go through these waves, and my hair grows back and it's beautiful
yeah,
and I'm healthy, and then something happens and it goes again. And but I'm not sure. Again,
mm,
is it perimenopause? Is it the stress? I've had a lot of anger,
mhm,
and that, because I'm very pitta,
yeah,
and if we're talking about the doshas and Ayurvedic from that kind of side of things, is that what I understand now is that when the pitta, which is like the fire energy, is out of balance, it often brings up anger.
mm,
And I feel like in my perimenopausal stage, behind the scenes, I've been angry. I've been, and that it's frustrated, but that's the mood swings, and that's the shouting, and it's not to say that I was walking around in a rage, but a lot of it was internal, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and and I think what else I started having only probably like it's actually longer than a year, so probably 2 years ago I started feeling a lot of heat in my body, but then I've not had anything like this. The heat was not coming when I was asleep. I've not experienced any of that, but I would just be sitting there and then like a wave,
Yeah.
and then it would just subside. But what has been really interesting for me kind of recently is that I stopped drinking alcohol. I've not drunk alcohol for a year now, and all my symptoms have gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable the
Wild, eh?
change. Yeah. And back
Mm.
then, guess what? I was drinking a lot. And
Mm.
I feel like that the alcohol is like pouring petrol into the fire,
Yeah.
and it's bringing more heat, it's bringing more anger, and also it was bringing me sadness. But
Mm.
again, like, was it the menopause or the perimenopause, or was it the alcohol?
Mm.
Or was it just both? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like a collaboration of all the things,
Yeah. All the
but
forces of nature collaborate to help us see
yeah,
the truth of what we need, I think, in this
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. So are you're well past postmenopause, or you're sort of coming
I'm
into
kind of
that
in that,
stage?
I'm in that last bit. Like,
Got
I
you.
went I think I had 8 months of not having a period, and then I got one, and I was like, oh, damn. So then you have to
Yeah.
start
Okay.
again. So then I'm still in this
Oh,
again,
you
waiting to
are.
come, yeah, to
Yeah.
the end of
Yeah.
the year
I'm into
again.
that postmenopause stage. Well,
Yeah.
well done you. I mean, that's been such a milestone, hasn't it? Giving up alcohol. It's
Oh
because
my
it's,
gosh.
I know why we do it, to help ourselves relax, and because our, resilience to stress is not as good as what it was before perimenopause, but it's another stress on our body actually that
Oh
then our
my
liver
gosh.
has to deal with, our body has to deal with. Yeah.
Well, I think that we're so conditioned I think actually brainwashed is the word,
Mm-hmm.
because I read an amazing book by Alan Carr, and it's about how to control your drinking.
Mm.
And he talks about, right from the beginning, we are celebrating every single occasion, even celebrating death, that with alcohol, every single thing. And even and I even feel it now, like when I do something really good, or I come to the end of a course, or I've, been working so hard, and we want to reward ourselves with
Yeah.
alcohol because
Yeah.
we're conditioned. So to unpick that conditioning is it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and we're surrounded by everybody doing it. Even
Yeah.
like coming to New Zealand, I feel so strong about not drinking, but I have like this little anxiety. It's like going because I know that when I come and see everyone will be like celebrating, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how we go out, and and it's those old patterns and relationships. They're the people that represent it, and it's not that it's bad that they still drink,
No,
but it
no.
can be triggering for those who are choosing
Yeah.
not to stay away
Yeah.
from it. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that will be another door to
another,
walk through, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I already did it when I went back to Los Angeles in the
Yeah.
summer, and I revisited all those friendships. And I know that if I can do it there, I
Mm.
can definitely do it in New Zealand. And and I know all my beautiful friends like everyone is supportive, but
Yeah.
it's not, it's just
It's
the
not that.
internal dialogue that's going on with me. Or it's like,
Yeah.
oh, why don't I just have one? No,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a whole
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Well,
thing.
here for you on that. So you are coming to New Zealand soon.
Yeah.
Um, February, I think. February?
Yes, I land
Yeah.
on February the 5th,
Oh,
and I'm
beautiful.
going to be in Auckland, and I'm meeting up with some of my biological family
No
that
way.
I haven't even spoken to them verbally. I've only been communicating with my sister via email. But
Mm.
yeah, so I'm walking through another
Holy.
kind of big door of,
Yeah.
just looking at my life through a different lens. And I'm meeting my mother's daughter, so she'll be my half sister. Her
Mm.
name's Gabby, and she's been really, really warm and inviting, and just I already feel very connected to her. And I even said it
Mm.
to her. I felt like I thought, oh, maybe she might think it's a bit like forward, but I just said I feel already very connected. I am
Wow.
grateful for everything that she's done for me this far on the journey. I'm not sure if my mother will show up.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of trauma and shame,
Mm.
and I think she's dealing with her own things. And unfortunately, on my dad's side, I'm speaking to my father's, not even his children, but the partners of his children,
Mm-hmm.
because another child has shown up on my father's side, but
Mm.
that child was conceived when he was married.
Oh,
So it's put a lot of stress in the family, and his wife doesn't know about me. So I'm not sure
mm.
whether he'll come.
Mm.
So I think the biggest thing is actually really sitting with, it's not more rejection, and it's allowing people to be with that, where it's their journey, it's what's happening to
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
it is very hard not to take it personally, because I go back to that inner child wound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That pre-verbal wound,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because like just as you talk, I can feel my mirror neurons firing off around what happens in our body
Yeah.
through that adoption process.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, even
Wow.
like talking to you, and I think maybe because it's you, but I'm feeling like
Mm.
there is, I, there's an underlying issue. And even though I have had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
therapy, and I
Mm-hmm.
have done so much work on myself, but it's there. I can feel it.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah.
coming, and it's just like, it's just
Mm-hmm.
everything's rising, and I'm like, I know in my logical mind what it is, and it's their thing, and it's not me, but still it's there. But it's going to be good to look at
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and to face it, and actually, I don't want to say to be done with it, but just to come full circle. I feel like I've been waiting for
It
this
is.
moment all of my life. And
Yeah.
even if I go away with, I also have another adopted sister who's coming up. She got adopted out, and her name's Deirdre, and she's a beautiful soul. And we've had a beautiful relationship for over 25 years, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even 30. And she's going to come up, and we're going to meet our sister together. And even if it only ends up that I have the connection
Mm.
with Gabby, then that's enough.
And I think that's a really good thing to keep reminding your young self
Yeah.
inside that is enough. Like that is huge. Because the visceral level of that rejection and abandonment will come to the surface, I imagine,
Yeah.
just with the prospect of connecting, being
Yeah.
in person with these people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're welcome.
truly.
It affects so many people,
Yeah.
especially in New Zealand, because
Yeah.
so many children were adopted between the 60s and the 70s. So many. And, you know, everyone's just doing the best that they
Yeah.
could at the time.
Yeah.
But I've read some, pretty, well, they were just actually very healing books, because they actually gave recognition to how much trauma comes from it.
Mm.
And, the separation of taking a baby and putting it with an unknown person, but with no, there wasn't any, back then it wasn't open adoption like it is now. And then
Yeah.
there's, like therapy for people. It was just like, oh, she'll be right, mate.
Yeah. On we
And
go.
on we go, upwards,
Yeah.
onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Little side note, and I
Mhm.
will move through soon because I know that we could talk for a couple of hours, but my grandmother was a twin and her mother was unmarried. This is in the 1920s, and her brother was adopted out, and my grandmother was made to stay with her biological mother, and her brother was adopted out. And that the trauma and shame of that has flowed down through to my mother, and then I have done work on it. Sounds a bit weird, but I have
No,
had to
it's
do work on it.
family
Yeah.
constellations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I've done a
Yeah.
lot of, I did some serious, like I had the most beautiful transformation through family constellations because
Mm.
they role played my mother and my both parents.
Mhm.
And I got to see, and this is no exaggeration, the man who played my biological father, and I didn't know at the time he was playing my biological father, but when they told me to open my eyes and there were two people
Yeah.
standing in front of me, this man who looked at me, I have never felt so, oh God, it might make me cry.
Mm.
I've never felt so much love
Yeah.
in my life other than when I gave birth. And it
Mm.
was pouring into me. He was crying.
Oh,
The
lovely.
whole room was crying,
Mm.
and no words had been spoken,
Yeah.
nothing. And it was just this unconditional love. And the facilitator, and this incredible couple who facilitate this here on the island, they're very, very gifted. She's kept saying, "You are so loved. You are so loved. You are so loved." And that is the struggle that I've had.
Yeah.
That nobody loves me. Even like if a friend kind of, had beef with me, that
Yeah.
feeling like, what have I done? Oh my
Mm.
God, they don't like me. And I've just,
Mm.
to get to later in life to understand like what your
Yeah.
traits are and why you're a people pleaser and
Yeah.
why it is that you feel so like deeply crushed if, someone,
Physically
yeah,
painful. Yeah.
yeah. And not
Mm.
for just a few weeks, like six
Yeah.
months. And I'm still
Yeah.
like looking at it going, Are they going to ring me? Like,
Mm.
come on." But now I
Mm.
understand it. And now I have more compassion for myself and for other people
Yeah.
who might be experiencing not that, but something similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
It's,
rewiring within the environment, family constellations, that
yeah.
constellation work, I haven't done it specifically, but there's a lot of that in psychosynthesis. It changes the way our brain is wired. It changes the connections in our brain and our
Oh,
nervous system and our heart and in our gut. Gut has got so much to do with very early life, right? Oh,
yes, of course.
wild.
Yeah.
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 So you mentioned before around psychedelic breath,
Yeah.
and so you are going to teach a day while you're
Hmm.
here in New Plymouth in New
Yeah.
Zealand, and
Hmm.
part of that will be around psychedelic breath. So
Yeah.
open the door for us around that because that's new to me. This form of breath work is new to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I just feel like this kind of coming home because it really
yeah.
is, it's full circle on so many levels. And I haven't been, and ironically I haven't been back to New Zealand for 7 years, like that
Wow.
yeah, I know. So I wanted to, the idea came from, I put a lot of day retreats on here on the island, and I wanted to share what I do with all my friends
Mm.
because I wanted to hold space for them, and I wanted to again share. So I thought, why don't I just bring a day where we get to do, you know, pranayama, yoga, meditation, and like that whole opening the body, just getting it ready because can do psychedelic breath without all the
Mm.
movement, but it's just everything is feels better. You can sit for longer when the body is open, the heart is open. So we have a morning of movement and stillness, And then we have a little morning tea, and Cherie Bailey from Wild Pear Kitchen is going to provide all the food. And then we don't want to eat too much, but then we go into psychedelic breath. And psychedelic breath is a rapid breathing technique. It's an ancient rapid breathing technique, and it's backed up by science, and it helps you shift your brain waves, bringing you into altered states of consciousness. It's not like holotropic breath work, and that's what I always need to be quite clear on, because I feel like breathwork's taking a bit of a center stage at the moment.
It surely is.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful because it is really, really powerful. But psychedelic breath is not trauma informed. It's not like with holotropic breath work, you need to have a sitter. It goes on for hours, and it can be very, very activating and triggering on such a deep level. Psychedelic breath is not this. Psychedelic breath it's tapping into your subconscious. It's helping you to listen to what your body's holding onto. This is not to say that it's not going to bring up emotional stuff, because it does, but it just creates a space for you to go deeper, and especially to take you into deeper meditation. But it's done to electronic dance music. And this is kind of almost like, it kind of gives me a bit of peace that all those years of kind of being in nightclubs in Ibiza, and I have a calling for dance music. And actually what's really funny is when I lived in New Zealand and I was a Les Mills aerobics teacher, I used to have all these tapes, and all the girls used to call me Debbie DJ. And so now
that just came back to me.
And so now what I realized is what happened to me personally is that I went to a psychedelic breath session in the yoga studio. Someone had brought it in, a visiting teacher, and I thought, that sounds really interesting. I'm just going to go to it. Didn't know what it was. Followed my curiosity, went along, and in my first session, I had an epiphany. I got I call it a download. Information, what you call it, whatever you want. But I was informed that I needed to learn it, to teach it, and to bring it to Mallorca. And that's what I got from it. And the very first time I did it. So it really can work a lot with your purpose. It can work with finding clarity. It can show you where you feel really stuck. And I can share another personal thing that's happened to me on another journey that I did. I call it a journey because it really is. It's like a journey back to the self. And I was having, it wasn't like clear visuals of, I could see that person clearly, but I had the presence of my biological mother on my right and my biological father on my left, because, and this is obviously in the last year where, again, it's what is in my subconscious. And I've been looking at this, I've been talking to people, I've been very, very involved in this big kind of transition. And it came up in the practice, and they were both there, and they said to me, we are thinking about you, but we can't come for you. So, and it was very sad. So you can imagine what was happening in that. And, you know, I see it a lot. There are a lot of tears. People are processing stuff, are looking at stuff. I know that just because at the end of the journey, we have an opportunity to share, which is really beautiful because it opens a space of vulnerability. And I feel like we don't even talk about these things with our partners or even our friends because it's very deep. People find it hard to be vulnerable and to talk about what's really going on inside. And actually, I'm always so blown away how people do want to share, because they're very not overwhelmed, but they're in such a good way. They're just like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I cannot believe what came up. You know, I'll share a beautiful example. There was a woman who, and she shared this at the end, that she has been trying to conceive, to have a baby, and she's never been able to go through that process. And actually now she's at the stage where they want to remove the uterus and so forth. And it's been very, very hard for her. And she has a lot of shame and doesn't feel very feminine around this. And she has had an inner dialogue that she's felt dead in that area. And that she is not really worth having any man in her life, because she can't give or reproduce and give that gift to any man. So she has a very, very negative dialogue. And she said what came up, and I was amazed that she shared this like with the group, because it was so beautiful. She said that in the practice, she felt a tree coming out of her uterus, and it was growing. And she just said it was overwhelming. But I explained to her that this tree is life. And and she hadn't told, like, she explained when she was sharing that what her inner dialogue was, but it was just so beautiful and
Wow.
and profound. And some people are seeing a lot of animals, so and I think this is the connection with the spirit animal. Some people feel this very intense in their body, and they're not kind of getting so much, because we can activate the third eye, so we can get lots of and like I said, visuals, and that can be on any level and dimension. But another good example was a guy came, and it's actually what I love about it is it's attracting a lot of men. I have they I don't know whether it's because they feel like it's something that they can do and sit in this space, but it's the curiosity for the men coming in is beautiful.
Yeah.
But one guy was sharing at the end, I felt great. I felt strong. I feel like all the work I've been doing is really working. And it was all very positive, positive, positive. And he rang me the next morning and said, I had nightmares. And I know what he's going through personally. And he said that what he's going through personally came up in his dream. And that is the body.
Yeah.
It's coming up in the dream because he didn't want to look at it, because he also has this veil on, this facade that everything's great. I'm doing great. I don't want to look at what I'm going through. I'm putting it there, and I'm just going to push on through because I don't, and it came up.
Yeah,
so it still
when he was
came up.
asleep and his defenses are down, his conscious mind is inactive, it showed itself.
Yeah. And he was blown away. He was blown away because he knew I said to him, that's what you need to look at. That's what the breath work brings up what you need to look at.
Yeah. How cool that he had that trust to ring you, no matter what his relationship with you is, but that he had that trust to share that with you. That's a really cool sign from my perspective.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I'm always very honored how much people want to share at the end, because it is a very safe space. And I think it's a big part of the journey, is like, we get there, we arrive with curiosity, because most people haven't experienced it. Psychedelic breath is, it's born out of Berlin. So, I'm surprised if it's got to New Zealand yet, because it's, I think there's only 100, maybe 200 licensed practitioners out there. And it's created by a woman, her name is Eva Kazor, and she got a download that she needed to bring this and birth it and bring it to to the world for us. And so it's fairly new, and it's just so exciting because the responses are so positive, and people love it. They really
it
love
sounds
it.
really, really cool. So if people want to find out more about it, we'll put links in the show notes, and that will be on my website as well, but also on the apps that they listen to the show. But how can they book or check out more about the day?
Okay, so it's on
Yeah,
Humanities. Yeah, it's
yeah.
there. And what I've done is because I know not everybody wants to do yoga, or they don't, they don't want to do the yoga. So
Mm,
I've broken it into two. So if people just want to come for the breath work and to stay and have food and be a part of the community, they can come for the second part. And so to do that, it's $66 to come for the food and the breath work, or if you want to come for the whole day, it's $99. And that'll be, and it's
oh,
a full day, and it's beautiful. It's just like it's a gift to yourself.
it is. And you are a gift to the people that are around you, Debbie. Like whenever I spend time with you, I come away feeling good about myself, inspired about my life, inspired to have hung out with you. And
Oh,
I think that's just a natural thing that emanates from you. So,
oh,
you
thank
know,
you.
yeah, if people are interested and maybe they don't know you, maybe they haven't tried any kind of breath work even, I really think that they're going to be in really great safe hands with you. You have got
Oh, thank you.
a lot of women and men, I'm sure, here in Taranaki in New Zealand that really respect you. So excited that you're sharing this.
Oh, thank you. It's for everyone.
Mm,
Well, I will say almost everyone. There are a few contraindications, like
hmm.
people who have got heart disease,
Yeah,
high blood pressure, things like that around the heart, because it's very, very activating.
yeah,
But it is you don't need experience to come.
yeah,
You don't, if you don't feel comfortable sitting up, you can lie down. If you do feel like you want to sit up, but you need to lean into a wall, you can do that.
yeah.
I know that there's a lot of kind of stigma around yoga. It's that, I've got to be flexible, or I'm not, I'm whatever the dialogue
Mm,
is. But some people don't want to, or don't feel good enough to do yoga, whatever it is. I just invite everyone, if you
yeah.
don't want to do the yoga, come and do the breath work and see what comes up. Come with an open mind and see what comes to the surface.
Oh, I just love that you're offering it in that way. That makes it really accessible to so many people. Yeah. Hey, so we're getting to the end of our time, although I could talk for
Okay.
another hour with you. But if someone is listening to this
Mm,
and
mm,
most of my audience are women life, not all,
mhm,
but most of them are, and they are feeling that I am just so stuck feeling,
mm.
what
Yeah.
advice would you give them?
Okay. Well, I know this feeling so well.
Mm,
And for me, the best advice is that I received, and I still believe, is that you are one decision away from change. Just one decision. All you
yeah.
need to do is just choose one thing for yourself. And just by making that one decision, you can just unlock another decision. And one good decision, I'm making a good decision, will lead to another good decision and another. And it's little step by step by step. I
Mm.
think we put too much pressure on ourselves for change to happen immediately. We're always looking for a quick fix. And I look at where I am now in the making. We're talking years, sometimes
Mm.
decades. It's a life journey.
It's a
So
life's work, right?
yeah, it is. So be patient, be kind, but know that it's possible. It really is.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with people, and people who are listening to your show, they're surrounding themselves, even if they're
Mm.
listening, they're
Mm.
surrounding themselves with people like you, who are holding the space, who know what they're doing, who can help, who can
Yeah.
help. And if you're
Yeah.
scared, ask, write
Mm.
in, say what's
Mm.
coming up. The more we start to share,
Yeah.
and the hardest thing is to be honest. But
Yeah.
be, if we're not living from a place of truth, nothing will change, because that whole thing, I'm fine, you're not fine. When someone told me, you're not fine, Debbie, I just literally started crying. I was
Yeah.
like, right, I'm not fine. I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, start being
And
truthful.
that's a really, really good thing to acknowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Debbie Lash, it has been such a delight as always. I just love speaking with you. You have a heart of gold and you radiate Pitta energy in the best possible way. And I cannot wait to see you when you're in New Zealand. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Again, thank you so much. I'm super grateful, and I cannot wait to like get through the screen and squeeze you so tight.